please remember to press it again when you finish speaking, or we'll just be hearing everything that you say. And that's what I need to do as well, make sure that I click this button as well. There is one slight change to the agenda. The Employment Right Bill and Ofsted Reform have been switched just so that Darren can attend the DFE meeting later. So we've just switched them round. And then just get my agenda back up again. So our first presentation for you today is from Damien Multy on the STRB report and pay update, who is the national official with our salaries and pensions and conditions of service team. So over to you, Damien.
Thank you very much, President. And lovely to see so many familiar faces, but also great to see lots of new faces. For those of you that haven't met me before, I used to attend as a local secretary for many years, where I was the local secretary from Knowsley, and I always found these briefings tremendously useful and important. I'm hopefully going to get through the detail that's on the slides relatively quickly, because I think the most valuable thing you'll take away from today are probably the questions, and the questions that you want to ask and the answers, hopefully, that I'll be able to give. I think in terms of the hybrid meeting format, my first bit of feedback, really useful. I've got a microphone, but what would be tremendously helpful as a presenter is if one of these TVs was facing the other way, so I could not have my back to potentially the screen with people on the screen. But that's just, I can see the presentation here, but I was thinking what I can't do is I can't see the response to the other participants that are online. And it feels like they're probably looking at my back, although I know they're not, because the camera is facing this way. So it's a bit, for those of you perhaps that have taught in a hybrid fashion, I didn't before I left teaching three and a half years ago, but it's just a bit discombobulating to think that there's people behind you, that are taking part. Thank you, Chris. That's great. I can see them on the screen now. Thank you. So without any further ado, I'm going to take you through a little bit of the timetable of the STRB process, the 36th STRB process, and where we are currently up to, and what that might mean for your pay and our members' pay in future. So the 36th remit, as you can see on the screen, is the first proposed. Oh no, we can't see on the screen. I can see on this screen. Chris is juggling 2 or 3 screens. It's the first time we've used the hybrid facility, so just bear with us. While Chris gets the text up on the screen, this is the first. Am I getting feedback from somewhere? This is the first multi-year pay award for a long time. The last multi-year pay award we had was back in the 2000s, and the Secretary of State has asked the review body to make a pay recommendation for the next 2 years with an indicative pay award for the 3rd year. So to be clear, that's for the pay award year September 2026-27, September 27-28, and an indicative pay award then for the final year, which is September 28 to 2020. And that's when the We'll try and the front. Is that better online now? I can't see any feedback. Yes, there we go, Lee. Yes, thank you, Fiona and Lee. And mine. Yeah, thank you, Chris. So what we also know in terms of the remit letter that we've that was issued in July 2025 is that no additional funding will be made available other than what has been allocated in the comprehensive spending review. And our initial assessment of that at the time, I'm getting feedback again, I don't know why. Our initial feedback at the time when we looked at the comprehensive spending review was that the overall Department for Education budget was going to increase by between 2 and 3% in each of the next 3 years. And the Chancellor had been clear that there were a few protected departments. Defence was one and education is another. It doesn't feel like much protection if the only increase is going to be approximately 2%. So the Secretary of State has said to the review body, I can still hear feedback in my ears. Well, kind of defeats the purpose of having a roving mic. Okay, I'll try that, but I can still hear feedback. So the Secretary of State has said that if the review body makes a recommendation that's higher than what the department budgets are on average, then it'll be for schools to find the difference. And of course, we know that that's the case in the current year. Last year's pay award wasn't fully funded, and schools are expected to find 1%. Now, that's an on average that the department had determined. Thank you, Chris. Well done. We also now know, sorry, I'll just go back to the first slide. We also know that in the remit letter, the Secretary of State has asked the question, should the current 3-year salary safeguarding continue as it is? Because the feedback that a number of employers give is that that gets in the way of doing staffing reviews and creates inertia. And just in terms of some historic context, the 3-year salary safeguarding was introduced by the previous Labour government at the time when some of you may recall management allowances were replaced with teaching and learning responsibilities, TLRs. So that safeguarding period of 3 years was introduced to make that transition between 2005 and 2008. And it's remained as a key feature of the school teachers paying conditions document throughout. They also have asked, the Secretary of State has also asked the review body for their view on should bonus payments be introduced into the maintained sector. The academy sector have those freedoms because they don't have to follow the school teachers paying conditions document. And they've also asked what are the benefits and the drawbacks of the current directed and undirected time system. So those are the broad brush elements this year of the school teacher, the STRB remit. And in many respects, it's refreshing to see something in the remit that isn't just what should the pay award be. However, we were extremely disappointed to see particularly the last 3 points from the current government as part of the review process, because those would appear to be potentially detrimental changes to your conditions of service. So the remit was issued on the 19th of July. On the 20th of October, we submitted our written evidence, a very detailed written evidence, which is available on our website. Some of you may have seen it. Anyone had a look at it? No? Okay. I do encourage you to look at it. There's lots of really useful information there, and I've picked out a couple of the what I think are the key elements that we'll share in a second in terms of graphs and tables of information. The government missed the written deadline at very short notice. The previous government did as well on a couple of occasions, but it's not ideal whenever there's an independent review body process that then makes the decision to go, well, we better change the timetable because the government are late. Pretty sure that wouldn't happen if we were late with our evidence, but nevertheless. The supplementary evidence went in on the 20th of November. It was originally the 7th of November. Quite a tight turnaround. And that supplementary evidence is our opportunity to respond to what the government's evidence is, which we saw eventually at the back end of October, and also the employer's evidence. And the employer group is represented by NEOST, which I'll talk a little bit about in a second. We've then had an oral evidence session on the 4th of December, where the STRB writes out to each of the stakeholder groups with specific questions about their evidence, and a delegation, including the president, attended that oral evidence session just over a week ago. What happens next? By the end of February, the review body will submit to the Secretary of State their recommendations on the pay for the next 2 years and their indicative thoughts for the 3rd year. By the end of April, all the other matters that were in the first slide will be with the Secretary of State. So the STRB's view on salary safeguarding period, on bonus payments, and around working hours. Thank you, Chris. So what do we know? We know this year you've had a 4% pay award. What we now know, based on the October release of the inflation data for September, it was actually a 0.5% pay cut in real terms. So your pay has been further eroded by 0.5%. We've submitted our detailed evidence, and I think in the presentation, certainly in the original presentation I'd sent through, where it says written evidence and supplementary evidence there's hyperlinks which will take you to our publicly available. It's not behind your login, so any member of the public can see our evidence on the website. So what do we ask for? I'll not read these out to you in any great detail. I'll leave you to reflect on those. There's a few more on the next slide as well. Hopefully those won't come. Sorry, Chris, could you just put it back to the first one? The one that might be different, that you might not have expected to see, because we haven't had a multi-year pay award for some time, is we've put in what we think a reopener trigger should be. The current remit doesn't say what will happen if the pay award is lower than inflation. And we use the RPI measure of inflation, and the government use CPI, which is lower. We could have a long and detailed technical discussion about why we use RPI and why the government use CPI. But in terms of real living standards, the RPI is the figure that we use, and the TUC affiliates use as well. Thank you, Chris. Excuse me. So what we've said is we want the 35-hour working week, retaining 1,265 hours where your employer can direct you for a large element of those 35 hours so that you're clear what time you need to be in work, what work you're instructed to carry out, what time you can leave work, and all the bits in between the directed time calendars cover. We've rejected the bonus payments concept because we feel it's absolutely fraught with equality issues. It's on a grace and favor basis, and some employers potentially will use that as a way of saying, if you meet these targets, if you do these things, then maybe in 6 months or 12 months, you could get this carrot that we're going to dangle in front of you, and if we just keep moving it further and further away. And we believe it's absolutely out with the spirit of the original recommendations that came from the STRB as the Labour government took power, where the Secretary of State removed the statutory requirement for performance-related pay. Because to have a bonus system that deals with all the potential pitfalls of equality, you would need to put in systems and processes that are transparent and open that would, in effect, mirror performance-related pay progression. So it doesn't make any sense to us. And of course, we've said no to reducing salary safeguarding. Teachers are in a relatively unique position in terms of their notice periods, in terms of the cyclical nature of when teachers leave, in terms of end of December, Easter, end of Easter, and the majority of teachers that leave the profession or change jobs at the end of the academic year. We want to see pay portability restored in all state-funded schools. And important distinction here, I talked earlier about maintained schools. That's the schools that must follow the STPCD, local authority controlled schools, those that aren't academies, basically. State-funded schools are every school, which includes academies. It's all 22,500 schools in England. We want to see annual pay gap and action plans for gender, race and disability. And we want to see the creation of a National Commission on Pay in Schools, which will be wider than just teachers. It will involve the support staff as well, but we're not a recognised trade union for that group of staff. But we feel it's important that the totality of the workforce are looked at. Thank you, Chris. So there's a lot of information on this slide, and I appreciate if you're at the back of the room, you probably won't be able to see the detail here. So I will stand on the stage in a second and show you what each of the graphs are. Pardon me. 2010 is taken as the base year where all of these measures are marked at 100 for a baseline. The retail price index is the top line, and you can see from 2010 all the way up to 2025, there's been an 80% increase in total over that 15-year period of the retail price index, which is the measure, our preferred measure, and the TUC affiliates as well. CPI, which is the government's measure, is the purple line, and you can see that that's raised to, let me come over to this side, that's raised by just over 55%. Teachers' pay increases on the maxima of the pay range, because there have been some different pay awards along the way. M1, for example, has had a higher pay increase in a number of years. So teachers' pay is the red line. So you can see this red line here, big gap between the retail price index and where teachers' pay on M6 has been, but also a big gap between the CPI measure, which is the government's preferred measure. The orange line is the annual growth in all classroom teachers' pay, which is down here. We don't have that information yet for 2025, which is why it stops in 2024. And you can see the average teacher's pay is actually less than those on M6. And then for the public sector is the green line. Thank you, Wayne. That's the average public sector pay rises. And you can see there, again, big difference compared to teaching. Yeah. On average, other public sector workers have a much higher pay rise or have fared better, still below CPI inflation and still below RPI inflation, but have fared better than teachers.
Public. Green is the private sector.
Oh, sorry, green's private sector. My apologies. Thanks. I can't quite read the writing at this angle. So private sector's fared the best. Purple, the purple line here, is other public sector areas. Thank you, Chris. So pay restoration is one of the key things that we want to see, which is why we're asking in each of the next 3 years in our evidence for a substantial above RPI pay award. So what does that mean? Yeah, you can share all of this with members and MPs. This is publicly available. This is taken from our STRB evidence. I've said there's 84 pages in the written evidence. That was just one of the charts and tables. This written evidence is also, sorry, this table is also in our written evidence, and it shows the 25-26 salary with the government's 4% pay award in. So these are the new values for, apologies, these are the values for the rest of England. So if you work in inner London, outer London, or fringe, these values will be slightly higher. If the salary had matched RPI inflation since 2010, these would be the salary values in the second black column, and these are the real term pay cuts. And this is the totality of those real term pay cuts for those that have been in teaching since 2010. Ro.
Sorry, if I noticed what some of the taking photos. Hello.
If you could introduce yourself as well to the rest
Oh,
of the.
hi, sorry, I'm Roe Martin, District 28.
Yeah.
I noticed lots of people are taking photos. Will we be able to get a copy of the
Yes.
slide sent to us? Thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to
Yeah,
ask.
no problem, Rob. Good point. Next slide, please, Chris. Appreciate this. There's a lot of numbers on here, but the key thing, and this is in our supplementary evidence, is English teachers' pay on the 1st of September 2024, and we've had to use 2024 because not all the pay awards are in for the other nations, is joint lowest with Northern Ireland on £31,650. Scotland, Wales, Guernsey, Isle of Man and Jersey, all higher. Now, over the next 5 years, English pay is the lowest of all those nations and crown dependencies. It ends up here after 5 years at 43,607, with Jersey being the top one. But you can see even in Northern Ireland, teachers' pays higher. It's almost £2,000 higher. This is the amount extra you receive if you're in each of these nations. Northern Ireland, which is the next closest, after 5 years, if you're a teacher, you'll be earning almost £2,000 more than a teacher in England. If you're in Scotland, almost £7,000. Wales, just over £4,500. Guernsey, almost £13,000. Isle of Man, £11,000. And in Jersey, almost £15,000 more. The reason we've chosen 5 years is because a lot of other graduate professions that our members may choose to go into rather than teaching, or leave teaching to go into, have pay progression information about what salary you could reasonably expect to earn after 5 years. Also, I should point out, and it is in our evidence, that England now is the only nation of the 4 nations, so Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, with a 9-point pay scale, M1 to M6 and U1 to U3. Northern Ireland got rid of M1. Scotland have a 5-point pay scale. 6-point pay scale. And Wales have removed M1 as well, and they're currently in the process of removing threshold applications and making it a continuum through to the equivalent of the upper pay range in England, which will then become M7, M8 and M9, and it'll be automatic pay progression.